Hi folks, we're taskless today, taskless about your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the very stark differences between male academics and PhD students and female academics and PhD students. On one side, you've got the male academics, and depending on whose study you look at, there are some difference in the numbers. I'm really doing a bit of an aggregation here of a number of studies, but approximately 3/4 of male academics support a rigorous merit-based education. You know, we're trying to find the cure for cancer. We're going to train the scientists who are going to design the next rocket to go in outer space. They want the best of in terms of education, the most rigorous merit-based, strictly pass or fail outcome. If you can't make the grade, they're only interested on putting their time and energy into people that make the grade. And you know, why not? If you're lecturing at university and if you're going to get a PhD, you should be the best and the brightest. I mean, what's wrong with that? That seems fairly sensible to me. And if you can create a large number of people who meritoriously have achieved this high standard of education that they've been pushed and encouraged and tested and through competitive processes to be the best, then they're the ones that, on balance, are going to train the next generation, teach the next generation, or indeed start up the businesses that will get you to, design rockets to go out of space or find the cure for cancer. Now, female academics look at it from the complete opposite point of view. Advanced education, university education, is a place where there are winners and losers. To even get to university used to be you're a winner. To get the degree, you're a winner. To get a master's, PhD, you're a super winner. And this creates winners and losers. Now, any society that has winners and losers, in the view at least of these female academics, which means they themselves have not come through a merit-based system, any system that creates or structure that creates winners and losers is, in their view, fostering social disharmony. It's an environment of disharmony or lack of harmony, lack of social harmony, and equal outcomes, participation trophies and this sort of thing, does promote social harmony. Therefore, they see advanced education not as a merit-based, rigorous learning environment at all, but a device to prevent winners and losers on one hand, and to create, through social engineering, social harmony on the other. This was quite a difference. The numbers are almost equal. 75% of female academics believing that university should be a place to create equity and social justice and social harmony, and 75% of men believing that it's a place of rigor and merit and hard work and learning and so on. Now, you couldn't find a sort of bigger divide. Now, this is hardly surprising, I guess. In the early 70s, in America, 6 or 7% of the PhDs awarded were to women, and they were pretty much all in the social sciences, sociology, and they were pretty much all Jewish lesbians, by the way. And now we look at nearly 2/3 of last, 2023, I think it was, nearly 2/3 of all PhDs are awarded to women. And the masters are it's even a greater number. Now, how can this possibly be? How can it go from being 6% or so, 6 or 7% PhDs being awarded, and again in the social sciences, and again overwhelmingly to Jewish women, and then to today, 50 years later, give or take, there's 2/3 of all PhDs are being awarded to women. Did women suddenly become much cleverer? Did men suddenly become much dumber? Well, given the amount of PhDs being issued has gone through the roof, then it's not a case of men are being held back, or it's a case of women are being awarded PhDs non-meritoriously, and this is fine, because merit and rigor, as these female activists would see it, even though they're masquerading as PhD recipients of PhDs and teaching in universities, they would see that any form of merit or rigor it prevents social harmony and shouldn't really be allowed. But interestingly, they still want the prestige of having a PhD, even though they haven't earned it. And this seems to be a bit of a contradiction. So when you look at this, you can see why universities are turning into social justice, activist equity, feminist hothouses, because the majority of PhDs. In fact, if you look, say, go back about 20 years, just shy of 20 years ago, or at that point, women were starting to get the majority of their PhDs. They'd already had the majority of masters. They already had the majority of graduate degrees and indeed diplomas. So this was a natural sort of extension. And then these women, of course, have been gifted positions in teaching and lecturing at university and so on. So not only is it in the learning faculty, but in the administrative faculty, women are in the majority across pretty much every learning institution in the Western world. And so I guess it's not a surprise that given the social justice views they have. But not all women view education as social justice. The women in universities do, but the women who view still, like the men view merit-based learning and rigorous education as being the primary purpose of university, they're in the minority and they're not in decision-making positions. So the decision makers, again, across pretty much all universities, are very much in the hands of what we would call the woke crowd. But the difference surprised me to a large extent. Now, I suppose we shouldn't be that surprised. How did women go from 6 or 7% of PhDs to 65% of PhDs? How that possibly could happen? I remember certainly at high school, girls, very few girls passed the exams. For every 3 boys that passed the exam, there would only be 1 girl that passed the exam. Girls were generally not very good in class. The assignments and things like that they didn't hand in, or they would do odd things. For example, I remember one girl who wasn't very bright and was also quite lazy. She would do her assignments, but she would do pretty colours on the pages of the book. This is high school, by the way, and would put little golden stars and sticky little pretty pickies around. She actually was quite a good drawer, I thought, but she didn't do the assignment. Instead, she would decorate it and make it look pretty, but hand in a crap assignment. And just out of academic interest, even when I was, I don't know, 13 or 14 or something, can I see that, whatever her name was, Joanne, I think it was, and having a look at the assignment. She's very proud of the pretty pickies she's drawn, but didn't answer the questions. The answers she gave were wrong, and bad grammar, and the facts weren't, and so on and so forth. So it was a very low quality assignment, but she'd spent her time making it look pretty. That to me would sum up today how most girls view education. It's a participation thing, not a rigorous or a merit-based thing. And the whole idea of merit and rigor creates and fosters a non-equity outcome, and thus does not promote social harmony. So the education system should be used to promote social harmony. And this is pretty much what these studies and polls and so on. So female academics and female PhD students believe that the education is there to create and foster social harmony and social equity and social justice and so on. The very idea that there are some very bright, hardworking people creates social disharmony. We see this in the workplace now. There are so many affirmative action hires around the place that if somebody is hired who works hard and who is above average and accomplished and credentialed and so on, assuming they even managed to somehow fall between the cracks and get hired, they're probably going to be fired in the first few months because they'll make the people around them uncomfortable, coming back to this social justice thing. And this is the issue with the education, the advanced or tertiary education system. The idea that there should be the bright kids that pass the tests and get the prizes and get the medals, that's not social harmony. It's not social equity. We have to do away with that, say these female academics and PhD students. Now, why are there so many more female PhDs? Well, there's a professor emeritus, no less, that I know who does. I think he's professor of. It's one of the sciences. I think it's geology. And I was talking to him a little while ago, and if he wants to get grant money allocated by the university, he must have non-straight white male students. It's not a choice. He doesn't get a choice here. It's not a matter for debate. If he wants that grant money, they got to have it. If he wants that grant money, then he has to have brown, black, female students, PhD students. If he doesn't have that, he's just not going to get the money. Now, there's sort of a sting in the tail here that the less money he gets, then the less likely his tenure will be continued. And so he's really got no choice. If he wants to keep on working and keep his job, or keep his job in that level of prestige, which like head of departments or whatever it was, he's got to do that. And he's not happy about it and doesn't like the way he's being, threatened, in effect, that if you don't have, black lesbian PhD students will take all your money away. He doesn't like it, but that's the reality he has to live with. And he's saying in the other faculties it's the same. In the sociology it's off the charts, but in the sciences now they're doing it as well. And he points out that he's turning down the top male students, not because they aren't good or they don't deserve it, or he's got to turn them down because it's a requirement. He has to put so this is why, and he has to pass these students. He can't fail them. Once you've got a black or brown, and they've given you the grant money, once you've got a black or brown female, or a female for that matter, any minority group, anything outside of straight white males, once they're taken onto the program, the PhD program, you have to give them the PhD. Doesn't matter whether they're the laziest student in the whole world, you've got to give them the PhD. So it's created a whole strata of affirmative action. So you've got all these minorities, women, brown women in this case. In fact, he told me, he said, look, here's a brown woman from South America or somewhere like that. He says her work is terrible, but I've got to take her as the student, and I've got to give her the PhD. And he remembers a time when that course that he was doing was strictly merit only. You passed or you failed, and you did well or you didn't, and so on. So that shows you how standards and rigor and quality and merit have been reduced. But going back to high school, I remember very few girls would pass the exams. And come junior high school diploma time, there was a mass exodus of, students generally, but certainly girls. Girls were by far and away the majority who were leaving because they were failing the tests, failing the exams. They were starting to introduce an assessment system in order to create, again, the purpose of which was to create equity outcome between boys and girls, not because of rigor. And then girls were bestowed 100% on their assessments, whereas boys would get, the best student boys would be getting 10 or 15% on their assessment, which is like handing in assignments, where you're disruptive in class, or those type of things. So it's a very subjective type assessment rather than objective. And the teachers were, a lot of radical teachers union people, that they were handing out 100% across the board to girls in order to artificially bump their grade. So as now, boys were always encouraged, you're the responsible one, as I was, boys my age. You're the responsible. You've got to go out to, when you grow up, you've got to go out to work. You've got to bring home the bacon. You've got to look after the family, and You've got to make sure your family's healthy and happy and da da da. It's you. It's your response. You alone. You alone take that responsibility. And I took that very seriously as a kid. Oh well, right then. If that's you must bring home your paycheck, and you come last. Your family comes first. This type of thing. Now, when the talk about girls have to come first, we've got to make sure girls, but we have to have equal outcomes. Girls weren't given the responsibility thing. Boys were told the reason you have to work hard and do well is because it is you. You must look after the family. Girls weren't given that same responsibility thing. They instead said, well, you're entitled to come first in the test because that's social equity. But the boys were continued to be told it is your responsibility. But for the girls, it was a social equity thing. But the boys had much more motivation. Not every single boy, but boys, I certainly did, had much more motivation. I took it as a rather solemn duty that, well, I have to do well at school. I have to work hard at my job, and I have to, I have to do well at college and university. I have to do all that stuff because I have this responsibility for the family. Girls weren't given that same thing. They were just told you're being held back. The reason you're not coming first, the reason you're not doing is because you've been held back by the patriarchy. And so girls came at it with a sense of entitlement, that I'm entitled to an equal outcome, but I shouldn't have to work hard. I don't have to rigorously pass a merit-based test. And if I'm put in a merit-based rigorous situation, that's unfair because it creates winners or losers, and everyone should get a participation trophy, which increasingly is becoming a PhD. PhD is the participation trophy. So this is why we've got an increase in 2/3 of, nearly not quite 2/3, but nearly 2/3 of all PhDs, certainly in the United States in 2023, are being awarded to women. And I don't know how many have passed meritoriously. I would think very few. There could be a lot of PhDs in things like social sciences, but I've sociology and gender studies and lesbian dance theory and all this sort of stuff. And I've spoken before about the how in universities that have shut down the gender studies sort of components or majors in other courses which were around. They've shut those down, but instead they've replaced it with gender studies type questions in all sorts of faculties and other areas of study. In international international political relations, for example. I recently did the red pen on a master's thesis for one of my wife's friends, and she showed me the questionnaire that she got, and there were nearly all the questions were, pretty much all the questions were germane to the point and would all suggest a level of rigor. How describe the international relations between science and science. Gives names, dates, places, and that would suggest a sort of rigor. Or there's a question in there. Wait for this. There's a question in there that says, how has modern international relations affected women? That's it. That's the fucking question. And they're allowed to do that. Women are allowed to do that question and still get a master's. Now, she opted, this lady who I did the red pen for, she opted for this question. And even then, the quality of her work, if a third-year high school kid had handed that work in, I'd have flunked it. But she did that abysmal, lowest quality work, but she still got the master's. And there's nobody ever fails, as she told me with a sort of a wry, almost sardonic smile, actually. But as she told me, no one ever fails that question. That's why I plumbed for it. And she pointed out the money she spent on doing the masters, and so she felt, well, I've spent all this money, put this time in, I'm entitled to a degree, so I'm going to take the easy way out to the masters. I'll take the easy way out to make sure I get one. So we need to understand that whereas girls would make up, a tiny proportion, certainly when I was graduating to university, would make up a tiny proportion of people going to university. And even then, it was, they were studying sociology and poetry and this sort of stuff. They weren't doing any of the rigorous courses, peace studies and so on. So now they've gone for almost no girls going to university. to where, 60-70% of all kids going to university are girls. They suddenly become incredibly brighter. Were they encouraged to work harder? I don't see any sign of that at all. Certainly the women, girls that younger women, well, they've asked me to help them with, the red pen and look at their papers are the lowest quality imaginable, yet they're still being gifted degrees. The same goes for the young women that, I've been involved in interview panels and things like that for engineering and the like. And again, the quality of these people in terms of their engineering knowledge and they're lazy people who haven't worked hard, but they've got this I'm entitled to the same as a hardworking straight white male boy would get. A bright straight straight white male, a bright hardworking boy, would get a good grade in his his engineering degree. I'm entitled to that. I want that. I'm entitled, but I don't have to work hard. I don't have to be as bright as him or to work as hard, which is very much the Marxist sort of view of, I want that waterfront mansion that guy's got, assuming the guy didn't inherit it or isn't a drug lord or something. I want that. So do I. There's I saw recently in the press the CEO of a bank got paid $35 million last year. I would like that. Can I just walk in and, hey, I want that 35? Well, I don't have to work for it or study for it. I just want it. And that's really the attitude and the interest of social equity. Now, again, the women who are polled and things don't see a problem with this. We're creating social justice. We're creating social equity. We're creating social harmony. So we're the good guys. The people that believe in rigor and merit and hard work, they're the bad guys. And so this insanity has descended upon, and we're all the poorer for it because the quality of people being pumped out of university now, particularly in the minorities area, is diabolically bad. And we're saddling these low IQ, many of them young women, with debt that they'll hardly ever be able to pay off. I don't think that's good for society. And so they've got their participation trophy at great cost. And then they run around with this sense of entitlement. And this is the bit that I find particularly galling, this sense of entitlement. I want to be lazy. I'm stupid. I've got an IQ of 80. I'm lazy and stupid, but I want the same outcome as the bright, hardworking, intelligent white guy over there. I want the outcome that he gets, because that will be social harmony and social justice. Well, no, it isn't. On top of that, we take away the bright guy, the white guy's incentive to work. Why should he bust his ass? Whether it be at college or university, the workplace or wherever, why should he bust his ass when it's going to be the benefits of it will be taken away from him or diluted, where there has to be an equal first place with some lazy, low IQ chick who has to get the co-medal, if you like, for the coming first in the year. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.